From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tanoory, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Next on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast, we have Matthew from California. Matthew, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you calling in. Let me know a little bit about what's going on in your world and what question you may have.
So the reason I wanted to schedule this is it's kind of more of a soft skills question. It's the new year, and I figure it's a good time to really make sure that we're focusing on culture and any sort of changes we might need in the practice. So I had a coaching call with you to talk about really getting clear with the core values. The main question I had is, once goals and core values are written down, what are your regular cadences, both for yourself and for your team, to make sure that you're reviewing them, sticking with them, and keeping the team accountable for them?
Yeah, super good question. So just to give the audience a little context, Matthew, you are a dentist, right?
Yes.
And you own the practice or are an employee in the practice?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I own a practice. I took over in November of 2021. So I've had it for a little over 2 years now.
Awesome. So first things first, I'm super impressed that someone that's younger is focused on, how you described soft skills. All too often I mentor and coach younger dentists, and all they want to do is think about how many crowns they can pump out or how can they get their hygienist to produce more revenue. And it seems like later on in life, they finally get to the point where they're like, well, maybe these quote unquote soft skills are important. Maybe it is important to have core values and have a vision and have things clearly articulated. So you're well ahead of the curve in that regard.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I will say that it's a lot of that is was forced upon me. I've had a ton of turnover, and I think from me a lack of clarity in my leader, and therefore lack of clarity in expectations for employees. And so I've really seen how just having clear core values written out can help in a lot of different ways in the practice.
Yeah, no question, right? So that experience that you just described, sometimes people can look at experiences like that and have a negative perception or a negative connotation. But you did just the opposite, right? You took that event and you said, okay, this is a gift and this is going to help me formulate what is important to me, what values I want to run this practice in this business by, and get them well defined and articulated. So props to you. So let's start from the beginning. So assuming that you have core values that you believe in, and assuming that they're well defined, which is a pretty big assumption, right? So, it's easy to say one of the important core values for us is humility. Well, humility might mean something to you and something very, very different for me. So once we have the core values laid out and once they have them well defined, to your question, it's really important to figure out how do we keep them top of mind of our team? How do we make sure that they're always quote unquote in your face? So we all are living by them. We're all breathing them, so to speak. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. I'll give you a few. And you let me know how they land. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
First and foremost, when you have formal reviews, core values need to be the number one thing that you are evaluating your team on. What we like to do is call them the rules of the house. And the first rule of the house is the core values. The second rule of the house is the roles and responsibilities of the particular position that you're in. So before any type of evaluation is being done, like an assistant's ability to make nice temporary crowns, the core values are being assessed of the employee. So at least on a quarterly basis, you're sitting down with someone and you're going through each of these core values. You're going through the definition and you're going through what your perception is with the employee on how they're doing with that particular core value. Now, we use a EOS system called the BAR, and it's a plus minus system. So in a situation like humility, if someone follows your definition of humility to a T, then you would mark them as a plus. If someone clearly does not manage your definition of humility, you would mark them as a minus. And then if they're kind of on the fence, like a 50-50 thing, then it's a plus minus. But just using those core values during a formal review is a great way to keep the core value top of mind. Now, on a much more frequent basis, there's a lot of different things that you can do. You can have a core value be discussed at every morning meeting, right? So I'm not sure what your normal morning meeting agenda is, but once you get through the basics like new patients on the schedule, opportunities for same day treatment, what's the rest of the week look like, then you have a literally 2 to 3 minute section of the morning meeting where you talk about a specific core value, you recite the definition, and then you just ask open-ended questions to a specific person on your team. What does that mean to you? One of our core values is when in doubt, do the right thing. And we have that core value very well defined. So you could say, Amy, when in doubt, do the right thing. Help me understand what that means to you. Or Mary, when in doubt, do the right thing. When was the last time that you exhibited that behavior in your day-to-day routine? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Another great opportunity to express core values on a regular basis to the team is in recognition of that behavior being exhibited. So it could also be at morning meeting, or it could be on some type of inter-office communication website that you use. It could be a group me page that you guys have together as I'm not sure exactly how you guys communicate electronically. But give me an example of one of your core values, Matthew.
I'm sorry?
Give me an example of one of your core values.
Honesty and integrity.
Perfect. Honesty and integrity. And again, assuming that you have that pretty well defined, so your team doesn't have any ambiguity when they're trying to understand what you mean by honesty and integrity, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So at morning meeting, or like I said, on some type of group messaging platform, you can recognize someone that clearly showed honesty and integrity from, say, the day before or the week before, and cite specific examples of that interaction. Again, Mary, your front desk person, went from behind the front desk and went to a patient in the waiting room, apologized that you guys were running 10 to 15 minutes behind. And instead of lying and saying something like, we had an employee call in sick, that's why we're running behind, they were very honest with the patient in an effort to be fully transparent with the patient, and told them exactly why we were running behind. So that would be an example that I personally would share with the entire team, so they understand how important the core value is to you, and they have an example of how a specific team member lived that core value out the day before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Do you think that would be does that give you some tools to use in terms of ways to make sure that the core values are always top of mind with your team?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, I guess in the initial stages, the adoption of those habits feels a little forced and maybe a little cheesy, but I guess it's, that's going to be normal with anything like this, because you have to bring it up front of mind so that they get excited about it.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with you. It is cheesy until the team starts to realize how important it is to not only you, but to what you're trying to do and the culture and the practice that you're trying to grow and trying to lead. And I will assure you that once it becomes a routine thing for you and your team, you won't want to go back to any other way. There's so much clarity in having the team understand how they're expected to behave. And when you don't have that clarity, that's when the wheels start coming off. And that's when people start behaving in a way that is against what you're all about. I will also say that any type of skill, playing the piano, shooting foul shots, is always awkward at the beginning, right? And then you start to practice it on a regular basis and it starts to become very fluid, very comfortable. The hard part is getting through the initial awkwardness of this whole process. So one of the ways that you can do that is manage expectations with your team and say, hey, look, I know, and just be transparent. This is going to be a little weird. We've never done this before, but it's really important to me. And I think it's going to be really great for you guys. We are going to talk about a specific core value every day for the next 90 days. We are going to recognize someone that's exhibited this core value behavior every day for the next 90 days. And if after 90 days you feel this was a complete waste of time, then we'll talk about scrapping it, or we'll talk about maybe doing something else. But I feel very confident that by doing this every day, after 90 days, we're going to feel so great about this that we can't imagine not doing this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. That answer your question, Matthew?
It does.
Anything?
Hey, how much time do we have left?
Anything else on your mind, brother?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, just to kind of use this same concept, we also talked about more tangible goals, like, for example, the desire to grow to the point where you have an associate, which means reverse engineering with metrics, right? Like, I have to get this many new patients and have this many active patients and, be booking after this point. How often do you, I guess how often do you revisit that? What are your cadences for reviewing those sorts of goals? Like, I mean, for example, do you just set out a time each month to sit down and review? And what exactly are you reviewing or measuring to make sure that you're still on track for those kinds of things?
Yeah, super good question. So you have to be a little selfish with this because you own the practice and you get to dictate the vision that the practice is going to take. And being a solo doc versus one associate versus two associates versus three versus however many, that's ultimately your decision. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I want to make sure that you realize you have permission to pivot on that as well. So sitting down, the way I do it is quarterly and redefining what you want your vision to be is super important. So if your vision is ultimately a 3-doctor single location practice, awesome. Congratulations for having clarity on that vision. And then the next question is, when do I want to accomplish that by, and what needs to happen month over month or quarter after quarter in order to make that happen? And as you know, there's a lot of different answers to that question. Do you have the facility for it? Do you have the team for it? Do you have the demand for it? But all of those questions are byproducts of you sitting down on a quarterly basis and reconfirming that this is the direction that you ultimately want to go. Does that make sense? You there, Matthew? Does that make sense?
Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry, you disappeared for a second. You said reconfirming.
Yeah, reconfirming that that's what your ultimate vision is. So once you have that, then everything else is fairly straightforward. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I were in your situation, again, I'm just kind of making stuff up here, Matthew, but if I was in your situation and the goal was a 3-doctor, single location practice, then the first hoop to jump through is landing the first doctor. So what do we have to start to do? What do we have to have in place to get that person in the building? Do we have enough treatment rooms? Do we have enough patient demand? Stuff like that.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question. Is there a more specific question in regards to that I can help you with?
No, I think, I appreciate your answer. I think it's a lot, there isn't a whole lot of, I guess it's just like, what does it look like to sit down and revisit? Like just to sit down and think. And I guess like having specific steps for each goal is helpful. And I think maybe that's where my disconnect is. I just need to have more tangible steps to get into each goal. Yeah, for sure.
So how can I say this? It's simple, just not easy, right? So
yeah,
and you can start it even from a revenue perspective. So when you have 2 doctors, what's the revenue look like? What's the number of employees look like? What's the number of operatories look like? And then, like we've talked about in the past, reverse engineering from there. So literally, when you lay out these goals, put numbers on them. Don't be subjective about it. Be very objective about it. By the end of the year, I want the revenue to be this. I want the number of doctors in the practice to be this. I want the number of hygienists in the practice to be this. And then decisions that you're going to make on a weekly basis ultimately get you to that point. So I don't remember your exact situation, but facility has to be one of the things that you think about. If you don't have enough room for 2 doctors, then we need to start making some decisions that's going to allow you to have a bigger facility. You don't necessarily have to hire doctors right now, but you can at least start to interview them, or you can at least start to create an avatar for who is the ideal associate that you want to be in your practice with you. Those are things that you can start to do now. And then when you do have the facility, when you do have the patient demand, it becomes a lot more easy for you.
Yeah.
All right, Matthew, I really appreciate the call, and hopefully I can help you. Feel free to reach back out, and we can talk this through at a deeper level. Okay.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matthew, for a great call. I love the word cheesy. And I agree, it is cheesy. Anything that we start from scratch, anything that we do for the first time feels awkward, feels cheesy. Playing the guitar, playing the piano, trying to get more intimate with our relationships. It's all cheesy at the beginning. But if we believe in the importance of it and we really press forward into that discomfort, into that cheesiness, on the other side of it, we'll see a lot of benefit. So thank you, Matthew. So impressed that you're focused on core values at this age in your career. I wish I would have done that when I was in my 20s and not my 40s.
Next on the Dental Lighthouse podcast, we have Zane from Virginia. Zane, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I really appreciate you reaching out and calling in. How can I help you today?
Okay, well, I have kind of a long question. I hope you'll have patience to answer it. It's not one of these quick answers. Probably many people asked you this question before. I've been following you for a very long time, and I know that you have multiple practices. And right now, my practice is growing and growing very well every year. And I have some opportunities coming, here and there. Of course, to have an associate joining me or hopping on a different business or be a partner here and there. And it feels like I keep playing this game and I enjoy it. And for most of us dentists, we are winning in this game. But I have 4 children and I have some other commitments in life. And I feel like this is taking me away from my other commitments and domains of life. I'm seeking, I am willing to play these games, business growing. Every time I get to a milestone, I want the next. I don't know. I try not to compare, but I don't know. Maybe my mind would compare sometimes. Okay, why I'm not doing this course, why I'm not growing this way, why I'm not having 2, 3, 4 offices. And I see you doing it and doing it very well. And you always have that piece of deep work that you will share with us. And you might understand what I'm talking in terms of, you're a family man. You have, I'm assuming you have children. How do you balance between all these things? My kids feel like I'm working the whole time. If I go and record my time and how I'm utilizing my time, I would say 80-90% of my free time is about business and dentistry and compliance and growing. I look at some people who have a very simple maybe business, and sometimes I feel they're winning the game of life better than me.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, and you very well articulated, Zane. And I appreciate you, the kind words that you used to describe my situation, and I can share that multiple failures has kind of led me to where I'm at right now. But if I can help you in any way, I would love to.
Appreciate it.
I don't want to state the obvious, but I'm going to. Comparison is the thief of joy, right? There's, and it's not just some quote that is on a wall or something like that. Like, there's a lot of truth to that. So I think that should be the backdrop of this conversation today. Is if comparison is what's driving you or anybody, then you'll never win, and you'll never feel the level of fulfillment and joy that you deserve to feel, because there's always going to be someone that has more revenue, more employees, more businesses, more locations, whatever it is, right? More money. So we can't use that as the barometer. What I would encourage you to do is write out some things that would bring you a level of joy and contentment, and fight like hell to make those things come true. And it certainly doesn't have to be something where you write down these goals and they're your goals for the rest of your life. You can revisit them on a regular basis. But you have to at least have a compass or a North Star to shoot for. So in your situation, again, it can depend on the age of your kids. It can depend on your income requirements. But some of the things that I would start asking yourself is, how much money do I really need to live the lifestyle that I want, that's going to afford my family the lifestyle that I want to provide them? And it may be $200,000 a year. It may be $2 million a year. Like, only you know that answer. So that's a question that I would certainly think about with your spouse, and come up with a number, right? And then that number should help you figure out what you need to do from a business perspective in terms of how many hours that you need to dedicate per week, how many businesses, practices that you need to ultimately run to get to that ultimate number. The next thing I would ask you to do is to be intentional about the type of dad that you want to be. And as kind of silly as it sounds, I call it a declaration document, where one of the declarations that I make on a daily basis is, I want to be dad of the year to my kids. And what does that really mean? So I have a number of bullet points underneath that declaration. And maybe it's because I'm an engineer, and maybe it's because of the way I'm wired, but I get really darn specific with what Dad of the Year means, from the amount of time I'm spending with each of my children on a weekly basis, the number of trips that we're taking, the number of interactions and lessons that I'm trying to empower them with. So once you start to kind of fill all this stuff out, your week gets pretty filled up, right?
Correct.
But unless you have clarity with what's important to you, unless you have clarity with who is the person that you are striving to be, get that answered, and then fill up your schedule, like literally in 15-minute increments, then you're just going to be in this rat race of always trying to beat out the guy next to you or the guy down the road, or always motivated to take on the shiny object that gets thrown in front of you, or the email that gets sent to you, like, oh, maybe I should do this, or maybe I should do that. Like when you have your identities and your goals laid out and you revisit it daily, it serves as such a filter to say yes or no to things that come your way.
True.
I hope that makes sense.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. And I, as you were talking, I'm taking notes, to be honest with you. I was just, sometimes how to be strong enough to say no, to some, the temptation of joining another or riding on a different business journey. And because sometimes you can enjoy some other stuff outside your family, and sometimes you need to bring yourself back and say, what is the most important thing? Because I feel we are all spending really minimum time with our families and with our kids, spending good time on the screen. We are as a family, I think every American family is suffering these days just to achieve some simple goals like having dinner together. So you put things in a perspective, honestly. I appreciate it. Well,
I think, and I appreciate you saying that, and you're right. But what fixes that is articulating exactly what you want. So if being Dad of the Year means that you're going to have dinner as a family 5 days a week, then you got to fight like hell and set up your schedule to make sure that you guys are having dinner 5 days a week. I was on a coaching call last week, and it was a similar kind of conversation. And the one thing that I said to Mark that really resonated with him is, every time you say yes to something, you're automatically saying no to something else. So when you say yes to squeezing in that patient, or when you say yes to sitting down to hear another job or a business opportunity, you're basically saying no, in this particular case, to your family or to your spouse or to your kids for the dinner that you had pre-scheduled, or for the walk that you were going to take with your teenage son, or for, the trip to the mall that you were going to take with your daughter, whatever it is. If you have clearly defined goals, like, this is what's important to me and I'm going to schedule it, it really helps create clarity on, where you're going to be at what times, and just gives you, like I said, a filter or a North Star or a compass of this is who I am. This is who I identify as. And everything else is just noise. It's just distractions.
I truly appreciate it. That was awesome. If that window will open again, I'll calling you. I'll do it in the future. I really appreciate your time.
You well said, Zane. I really appreciate you giving me a call, and looking forward to talking to you again in the future.
Thank you.
Have a good one, brother.
God bless. Take care.
God bless you too. Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tanoory, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.